Hey, what's happening, everybody? Welcome to episode 9 of Bettin N Boozin. I know I'm a lot. You're like, what is this handsome guy on here instead of that young dude, Kyle? But I'm on for Kyle this week. He let me host for once. We've actually switched. So if you're really missing Kyle, make sure you check him out tomorrow. He will be on the flagship show with Howard and Paul, I think his name is. Hasn't been on as much, but I think that's his name. I think he should be on this week. So make sure you check those guys out. I'll actually won't be on tomorrow. My son and I are checking out a one night only screening of Halloween. So Jackson will be doing that tomorrow. Good parenting, 11-year-old at Halloween in the theater. Doesn't get much better than that. So today, since I'm here, we're going to be talking through an awesome all stakes late pick 5 at Gulfstream Park. Doesn't get much better. We have the return of Forte, which we'll talk about. And then if you missed it, Howard and Patrick last night in episode some number, I can't remember what number, of the HHH Racing Podcast, they walked through the other 4 stakes races on the Gulfstream card. So please make sure you check that out. Tonight, we're going to bang out the late pick 5. And then after we give out our pick 5 picks, stick around. We're going to talk about some NBA and some NCAA basketball futures. Figured we didn't want to do individual games with the NBA and the NCAA tournament, the NBA playoffs and the NCAA tournament right around the corner. We figured this would be a good time to start talking some futures, see if we can put some bets in, see if we can give you some winners there. Before we get on to all the, bring Patrick and Charlie on, let's go through a little bit of our regular administrative stuff. As you can see on the scroll on the bottom, make sure you subscribe on our YouTube channel. Go to that on the right side. Oop, I always do that wrong. Howard's used to it by now. On the right side, hit that subscribe button. I think we're at a little over 1,800 now. We're trying to get up to at least 2,000. This tells YouTube how much you like our podcast, and it'll let us show up more in people's feeds. So please hit that subscribe button. Also, anytime you watch a show, hit the like button. And also notifications. If you hit that notification bell, that'll let you know every time a new podcast posts. So in the old days, we only had one a week. It was a lot easier. Now we have Wednesday, we have Thursday, we have sometimes offshoots on Tuesday or random other days or live ones on Saturday. So make sure you're in the know. Make sure you're ahead of it. If you just hit that notification bell, that'll let you know every time we have a new podcast. For audio listeners, whether you're on Spotify, Apple Podcast, Anchor, wherever you get your podcast, please listen, subscribe, rate, review, do all that. Again, that'll let them know that this is a podcast you like listening to. Our Twitter feed, you see for each of us, I assume, I know mine has my Twitter feed on my handle when it comes up. At H Kravitz is Howard Kravitz's Twitter feed, but it's also the Twitter feed for the HHH Racing Podcast and all affiliated podcasts with it. So please give that a follow as well. I know Howard was trying to get to a number. I can't remember what the number is, but we're getting close. Or maybe, no, we actually breached it. Now we're trying to get to whatever the next milestone number is. Also, check out the website, hhhracingpodcast.com. Nice and easy. Contains lots of stuff. Sample podcasts, power picks, links to our YouTube channel, and much more. And if you go on there, you can actually, there's one thing I wanted to show. I apologize. Let me bring this up. I wanted to show a quick example of our power picks because we always talk about it and we don't always show it on here. So let's just show a quick example. So when you subscribe to the Power Picks, which again, I'll put up the banner in a second real quick. Here you go. Patreon. Our Power Picks you subscribe through Patreon, but if you go to the website, you can get a link. You can click a button. It'll take you right there. $16 a month, $4 a week, basically $2 a card each week. So it's a huge deal. And if you look at it, here's what you get. You get sort of, this is our last week's results. And then if you go down, you get, for the main track, generally the one we discuss on our Thursday podcast, you get Howard's grid, Pete's grid, me, obviously, and Paul's grid. So you get our ABC grids for our pick 5 or whatever sequence we're discussing. You get spot plays. And last week, the spot plays were on fire. You had Wet Paint get a win there. Rad Route 1, who finished second, who Howard called at a very nice price. Midnight Taxes, who basically won for fun. And then you get the stats of the week, which are basically something I put together, which are just generally trainer pedigree stats, things like that. And then you get a secondary track where you're also going to get at least Howard's grid. Sometimes you'll get myself or Paul's grid. It depends on the week, depends on the sequence. But there too, you could see Enemy. We did the Saudi Cup last week. Enemy at a bomb. Actually, he got bet down a little bit, but he was a nice price. Howard had him to place. Gun Knight ran second, ran a nice race, just couldn't get to Elite Power, and then June Light Bolt. But basically, this is what you get for nothing more than $4 a week, $16 a month. So we really suggest that if you want to subscribe, this is the best time to do it. Derby preps are coming, Derby season is coming, and we'll have special things for Derby and the Triple Crown when the time comes. So now we'll get rid of let's finish off with all the administrative stuff. Last thing, the next show tomorrow night, episode 235, preview of the San Felipe Late Pick 5, excellent stake races. Again, big Derby prep, which is always exciting. It's going to be Paul, Howard, and Kyle, like I mentioned. So please watch that one as well. And then if you are interested in Howard and Paul's Gulfstream picks, since tomorrow they'll be covering Santa Anita, again, we're going to cover Gulfstream and Santa Anita in the power pick. So if you want their picks for Gulfstream as well, since the card is so great, make sure you subscribe before this weekend. And then Howard will send out the picks usually on either Friday night or generally Saturday morning. So I think that's enough of me sort of blathering on. Why don't I bring on my co-host for tonight, who unfortunately, which makes me feel old, is you combine their ages and it still doesn't even catch up to me. But we're gonna move on anyway without that. So here's the normal Bettin N Boozin guys. We got Patrick Kuenzel from Jersey and Charlie Freeman from Ohio State. Right? You're in Ohio, right now?
Yeah, I'm at Ohio State.
Okay, just making sure. I shouldn't be too hard to figure out from the poster behind you. So what's up, guys? Patrick, how's it going, man?
It's going well, Pete. Thanks for filling in for Kyle tonight. We could use some maybe discipline tonight on our handicap.
Well, then you are in the wrong. You have the wrong host tonight because I am discipline is not my forte. Charlie, what's going on with you, man?
Not much. Doing well. I actually have the Ohio State basketball game in the background, and we've been really bad this year, but it looks like we might win another game. So
who are they playing? Anybody? Is it a good upset or somebody they're supposed to beat?
I mean, they're playing Maryland. Maryland's a ranked team.
Oh, so Maryland's been pretty good.
Yeah, that's a pretty good win. So I'm pretty. We haven't had many of them, so I'm pretty happy to see one.
You got to take them where you could get them, right?
Absolutely.
Hey, Patrick, how was the one-on-one with Howard last night? I heard you say that you were moving up to the big leagues. It felt like. Does that mean that I'm in like the minors now? I don't really look at it that way, but I heard that comment.
Yeah, no, that was kind of like an indirect diss, I guess, at me and Charlie and Kyle's show. No,
okay, that makes a little more sense.
No,
then, but
it went well though. I mean, we're going to talk about this Gulfstream card is unbelievable.
It's fantastic, yeah. And I mean, what you did four races last night, correct?
Yeah, we did 4 races, all stakes races, and I mean, even the 7th race in between the 4 stakes is, horse White Abario's running in the set.
Oh, that's right. Yes,
it's unbelievable. So it's great.
Let's real quick. We'll get look at this. This must be. I assume that's Howard in there. Can't wait to hear what you guys have to say and what drink. So unfortunately, old man here is on some medication, so he's drinking some iced tea. Although I could have lied and said it was some crappy lager, but that's not the way I drink anyway. What do we? There we go.
Yeah.
And Charlie's just staring into space, so he's I don't know what he's got going on, but he's watching that Ohio State game. So
I'm not allowed to technically yet, but soon enough I'll be able to join in on it.
I got you. We don't want you to get arrested from the podcast, technically. All right, and then like I said, and you guys sent over. Thank you. We're going to talk at the end of the show. We're going to talk some futures bets as well. I know you guys are probably more. I need to start following your college ball. I used to love college ball back in the day. I don't follow it as much as I used to, so I might have to follow you guys. Although I did throw one of my futures bets is a college national champion. So when we get to those, again, everybody stick around and we'll give out hopefully some winners in futures as well. So let's jump in. Oh, here we go. We got Nick in here. 4 rows of small batch select tonight for me. Cheers, Nick. Everybody, put your drinks in the chat if you'd like. All right, so let's jump in. So we're going to talk about. Here we go. We're going to talk. So one thing, we don't have any odds aside from. I don't think so. Let me refresh one more time. but I don't think, no, we do not have any odds yet, except for the Fountain of Youth. So as we normally do, we will look at the first race, the WinStar Gulfstream Park Mile Stakes. It's for 4-year-olds and up, purse 200,000, a mile on the dirt. The assumption will be, I assume you guys will agree, that the favorite is going to be Charge It. You guys agree with that? We just have to see how low. Yeah, we're in agreement there.
I agree. Yep.
And actually, it's cool to see a horse like that come back. I'm sure we'll get into it and we'll look at our picks in a second. But it's cool to see some potential stars back on the race tab, just because we're a little devoid, especially in the older handicap division. So let's see. We'll get into the PPs here. And so you could see on the bottom, it's not just me, Charlie, and Patrick's picks, since Kyle's not going to be here, but he handicapped. We also threw his picks on the bottom as well. We're not going to go through them, but we will give his pick 5 at the end. But in case anyone wants his picks, you can at least see them on the bottom. I think we'll start here. Patrick, we'll start with you because we're going to just start with Charge It. I mean, he is the obvious favorite. Looks really good on paper. What was your thoughts in putting him on top?
Yeah, it just, like you said, he looks good on paper. I mean, his buyers just stick out glaringly. It's unbelievable what he's done. And, he was even on that long layoff after getting injured. So, it's incredible how this horse has come back and just, picked up where it left off. And I feel like this race is just a stepping stone for this horse. Like, this horse is just going to get better and better. Training, unbelievable.
Yeah. I was going to say the same thing. Yeah, looking sharp in training. And you feel like the mile, even though they probably want to stretch him out, you feel like the mile really, really suits this horse really well. So he's probably going to be tough to beat. I know you have the 6 endorsed. I don't really have anything to add. Charlie, do you have anything to add? You have Charge It in second, but do you have anything to add, or he just looks like a pretty obvious choice to have at least on your ticket for sure?
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like this horse has to be on the ticket. It'll definitely be in the top 2. I honestly just mainly went with the 6 because I prefer that running style and because I kind of assumed that the 7 would be the obvious choice. So I figured I'd at least want to try to be a little different. I know Kyle's not on here tonight, but I'm sure I wasn't surprised to see at 7. I know he loves his chalk. So
we're chalking it up for him. We're me and Patrick are chalking, and Kyle you knew Kyle. We could have predicted that was that was 3 to 5, right? Yeah, that was 3 to 5 that you could have.
So that's why I volunteered.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at endorsed, I mean, the form is fantastic. And I mean, he's since those last 3 races, I mean, just from a buyer standpoint, I say this all the time on our show. Anytime you could see a natural sort of progression buyer-wise, you really like that. Like you said, the running style. I think there's some speed. There's a little bit of speed in this race. Is that what you were thinking, Charlie, when you were saying you like the running style?
What I was kind of thinking is obviously with Charge It having ridiculously good figures and probably going to be maybe not on the lead, but at the very least right behind him. I feel like the only really way that I see Charge It getting beat is if the pace happens to get crazy enough where they start to tire and Charge It stays up there, but endorsed gets past them. So that was kind of my thought process. If I'm going to pick anybody to beat Charge It, I have to have a way to somewhat justify it. And so that was kind of my thought process. Maybe Charge It is right up there with the speed horses. They all get a little tired and Endorse sits off and then goes right by. I do think Charge It wins, but I wanted to be different. And that's why I do think the 6 is the only other one that could really give Charge It a tough time.
No, and I think I'm with you. And actually, we'll stick with you for a minute. You have in third the 9 Nitrous Channel, who's potentially one of those speed horses we're talking about. Do you look at this horse as just someone, hey, I have to put somebody in the top 3, or do you think this horse actually has a shot to win the race?
I mean, it's tough, obviously, with the horse only running 6 and 6.5 furlongs and now they're stretching it out. It is always, at least in my opinion, a little concerning when it's a speed horse that's making that stretch because you don't know how they'll react to the distance, if they'll have enough in the tank. But the way I kind of saw it was maybe this is one where the 9 gets to the front and has enough pace where I don't see it winning the race, but where it could at least be a horse, maybe you get at a decent price in the exactas or the trifectas that finishes under them. So I was kind of just looking for a horse there. And then also I know being on the outside obviously helps when you're a speed horse. You don't have to really worry about getting crumpled on the rail. You can go from the outside. And again, the other thing I think is a plus is the fact that Irad Ortiz took the ride. I mean, he's one of the top jockeys. He's had so many days at Gulfstream where he's went on a roll that I just feel like he doesn't take this horse if he doesn't think he has a legitimate chance.
No, I agree. And if anybody's going to work a trip out, with the 9 from, and hopefully not. I mean, I hope you figure Irad's not dumb enough to where if Charge It decides to go to the lead because he may just be the best horse in the race, that you don't think Nicer's Channel is going to hopefully be silly enough to try and go with him, or unless they burn the 2 out, then Endorsed is really looking
Exactly.
strong. Patrick, you have the 3 Noble Drama in third. Again, is this one that you think has a win chance, or is this one, hey, this a monster closer who with some speed up front could just fill out the try? You're shaking your head. I didn't mean to steal your thunder there, but
You answered my question. Yeah, strictly underneath play. I'll play exact as in tries with this horse underneath. I just think this horse might be able to pick up a piece at a price. I'm not expecting this horse to be anywhere near the finish line, to be quite honest with you, but I feel like the pace could break down with Charge It just, busting this race wide open, and I could see Noble Drama maybe picking up a piece late.
by the way, you have your buddy. And I don't know what he's saying there. I don't know if he's saying he's sleeping on the favorites because we know that never happens. So I don't know what's going on there, but we got him in there. So we have to be good. We can't talk about him too much, but we will say 100% Charge It should be the favorite in this race. That's for you, Kyle. We'll take a drink for that. The last one I want to touch on real quick that I liked too was Octane, a little bit similar to what these guys talked about, though, where I'm not sure about him on the win end. He probably still needs to take a move forward, but I do like that he can run a nice stalking trip, which is exactly what he did last time. I mean, he basically ran a winning race last time, which you like, got the lead, and then just got swallowed up by Endorsed. But that's the kind of race where I think if he can repeat that and the speed, like you said, sort of breaks down, he could at least hit the board. And I'd just be curious to see what the odds are. Like the only bad thing, normally I don't like to make the pick 5 picks until I see the odds, because there may be a horse that I see is really overvalued or undervalued that I either want to include or exclude. So I'll be curious when the odds come out, sort of where a horse like this, I mean, I know Noble Drama, he's going to probably be a bomb. So that's definitely one underneath in a try or something that will make some sense. I don't think there's anyone else. Did you guys have anybody else in this race that you really want to touch on? Otherwise, we could probably move on to the next one.
Yeah, I'm good.
I'm good.
Here we go. Let's see real quick. We think Kyle thinks we're aggressive on the outside. We'll get out front, can hold on for third once Charge It blows by him at the 8th, if not sooner. That sounds about right, Kyle. So we're with you on that one. All right, let's go to the next one, the 11th, the Honey Fox, which is 11 horses, fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and up, purse 150,000, 1 mile on the turf. If I look at this one, I'm assuming, what do you guys think? I have to assume Speak of the Devil is going to be the favorite. You guys agree?
I agree. Yeah.
Although, speaking of it, a little disappointing in last out, so maybe not a layover, but it does have Irad and Chad, so it wouldn't shock me too much if that one is the chalk. Let's see where we all ended up. So we ended up, looks like, hey, you guys are joining Kyle in the chalkathon this time. I'll let Charlie, why don't you start us off and talk a little bit about Speak of the Devil and what you like about this one?
Well, what I like about this horse is, again, I mean, I guess you haven't gotten to be on the show with me before, but so for me, I tend to prefer stalkers and closers. I'm really not a speed guy. Now, unfortunately,
me too, Charlie. I'm with you. Me too.
It kind of goes more to like my Arlington days, because obviously that's what I grew up on. And so with those kind of tracks on those longer routes, a lot of times the closers would come home. So I just really like the length and the way that I think this race will end up turning out. I think just fits well for Speak of the Devil. Again, Chad Brown, obviously tremendous trainer. Irad Ortiz dominates here. I don't think that it'll end up being as bad as its last race. I know it is a big layoff. That's pretty much the only concern I have, is how strong will it come back? But I feel like Chad Brown is very good at placing his horses in the right spots to come back. And I really just think as long as this horse honestly gets a decent break and doesn't start way off the lead, that this horse will be fine. It'll sit right off the pace, and then Irad will make sure that it's doing its best work late and goes on to win. I won't say easy because this is a good field, but it should win.
I mean, and you look at that last race. Yeah, I mean, at the time it was super disappointing because the debut in America was so impressive, and then when running. But then you look at it now and you go, okay, Regal Glory in Italian, they're the two of the 3 Eclipse Award Eclipse Award finalist for filly and mare turf, and then Wakanaka, who's a quality horse. So at least she didn't just get beat by a bunch of garbage. She got beat
Right.
by as top quality filly and mare turf horses that we had in the country. So you hope, and again, yeah, like you said though, Chad coming off a layoff, that's never a problem, especially with his turf horses. He usually always has them fit. You have next, and basically a lot of us have similar horses. I'll let you talk, Charlie, too, about the 4 White Frost, because you have her in second. I actually have her on top, but I'll let you go first. What'd you like about this one?
I mean, for me, it's just consistency. You look at the figures, other than obviously the race in November, and as you had kind of mentioned earlier when we were covering the last race with Endorsed, is the figures just continue to steadily improve. Obviously, Bill Mott and Junior Alvarado have that connection. I know from the races we covered last week that then in those races this past last weekend, the two of them did well together. I just think that they between this jockey trainer and horse, and that each race between them, they've stepped forward each time. Now, I do know this is a step up in competition, obviously, from its last race with the optional claimant at 62,000. But I just feel like if this horse continues to step forward, it wouldn't surprise me if this horse wins. I still just like Speak the Devil more, but I definitely like the progress I'm seeing steadily from this horse and think that it will be very dangerous in this spot.
Yeah, and actually everything you say is sort of the exact way I think about it, where you can get a horse. I mean, the horse came off a 13-month layoff
Right.
and fires a lifetime buyer top. Again, the company wasn't great, but she did it impressive. And actually, I like the horse. We can get to her later. Miss Delicious. I actually like that horse a bit as well. So even though it was optional claimer 62 only, I think 2 decent horses came out of it. There was one stat I saw, Mod Alvarado. We always think of them as being so on fire. 3 for 40 graded stakes, turf routes, but this one was one of the wins. So you say, okay, maybe this is the one that'll buck any of the trends. Patrick, we'll go to you. You have the 4 and third. Anything different you want to mention? Or if not, we'll go to the 1 horse you have in second.
Yeah, I mean, I'd just say, going off of Charlie and stuff, I mean, the horse is versatile and the horse has improved on every race. So, I mean, there's not more you can ask with that horse, maybe a newer face in this level of racing. And Speak of the Devil, I think this horse is above the class. It's just, do you trust Chad off the layoff, which I do. You look at that last race, the horse, Speak of the Devil, got out slow and just never regrouped. And honestly, you don't expect the horse to running against that field, like you said before.
Yeah.
And then just the one, Faith in Humanity, that this horse kind of does scare me because I think this horse could be really good too. This horse has been working tremendous. Um, has been off for a while, but that's not a concern again. So I don't know. I think it's 1-3, 3-1, and I don't. I just Faith in Humanity does scare me a little bit though.
Yeah, I mean, anytime, and I'll let you talk about this one too, Charlie. I was just going to say, anytime you can get a Chad Brown horse, a Klarovich, or even if it's off any sort of layoff on the turf, it's going to be dangerous. I did have a Step Brown Rosario, 39% win, 65% at 8 furlongs in graded stakes on turf. Again, that's pretty specific. One thing I did notice though, the number 1 hole at this meet, 3 for 50. So that at this configuration, that scares you a bit. But again, Chad's horses usually are. This one's a little bit likes to be closer to the pace, but maybe if this is one that could work out a trip, if some of the other, some of the speed goes by and it can sort of work out a trip with Rosario, he's comfortable usually with that. Or he does the opposite and sits too far in the back and craps the bed with your horse. But Charlie, what do you think about this one? You had the 1 and third. How do you see this one? You see this one as a real contender against, say, Speak of the Devil and the 4 horse?
I certainly think the 1's a real contender. For me, this is more of a 3-horse race between those 3. However, I feel like this race just really sets up well for the 3, and that's why I had to put it on top. Is simply if you look at the style of the 4 and the 1, they're both going to want to go to the front. Now, the 4 is okay with kind of sitting like a little bit off the lead, but they'll probably be 2 of the top with any other speed, whereas the 3 will happily sit off the pace and stalk or be behind. Like I mentioned, I like that style more. I just feel like, especially also because I know at Gulfstream it is a lot about speed, speed, speed. These horses love to fly there. So I just feel like this is, again, one of those races where, like how I mentioned with Endorsed in the last one, that just really does set up well for the 3 here. And I think Irad is going to know exactly how to use this horse and what spot to put it in. But I still think the 1 is dangerous. I wouldn't rule out that this horse can get away. I just feel like there's going to be so much other speed with it that it's really going to come down to more of its endurance than its speed, because I don't think it's fast enough where it gets away from everybody easily. And again, I think also on the rail, if it gets squeezed in, it could encounter a tough trip.
Well, and then one thing too is you get a newly turned 4-year-old who you never know. Again, 4-year-old newly turned 4 going up against older horses. Sometimes that can be tough in a top flight sort of graded stakes race, but also it could mean there's progression from 3 to 4. So we always talk about from 2 to 3 horses progress, and then from 3 to 4. Then after that, maybe they are what they are. We do see improvement, but we generally do see a jump from 3 to 4. So if this one does do that, I mean, and it's under the guidance of Chad Brown, so that wouldn't be a shock, then this one could definitely get to that level at least. And if for some reason Speak of the Devil just doesn't run and runs closer to that last race as opposed to the US debut, then I think this race is pretty much wide open. I saw someone mention in the chat, Matthew, Miss Yearwood had a shot, but that trainer is just chilly at the meet. Actually, I'm going to go down to that one because this is the horse I had in second. And you talk about you like off the pace horses, Charlie. This might be our type of horse. Then we're really going to need some pace to heat up. But one thing I do like, I always like horses to when they do something new and it jumps them up. So this horse, who was pretty good, I actually had this horse in the Black Eyed Susan, which sucked because she just got a miserable trip. But then when they put her on the turf, she wins beautiful here. Nice closing effort. Even though it's allowance, it's okay. Stretches out, runs against good horses in a grade 3. Now, again, I think there's probably better horses in this race, but that was her second on the turf. She jumps to a 91 buyer, has a great late kick. And then if there is enough speed, which I think there should be, I think this horse can make a run late. And if for some reason Speak of the Devil or the other Chad horses don't fire, then maybe this one can come from the back of the pack. I'd like to see the odds. This one could definitely be a Howard special where you put this one underneath in the try and just hope it can pick up the pieces. Someone mentioned, Matthew mentioned about Wilkes being ice cold. You see here 1 for 29 at the meet. So that's not that good. My man, Luca Panici, the Italian, not firing so well so far at Gulfstream. And then Wilkes 6 for 75 in graded stakes on turf, but his stats are a little better at Gulfstream. So hopefully, but again, I'm not looking at her as a guaranteed type. Hey, I have to see this one on top. I think this one though, if all hell breaks loose, can definitely pick up the pieces. Here we go. The Italian connection. Good job, Ralph. We always have to have some Italian mention in everything that we do here. All right. I don't think I had anyone else here. Let's move on to the next one. So we'll go to the 12th, the Davona Dale, 3-year-old fillies, 200 grand at a mile. We have 10 horses. And this one, I assume, again, I think we have a pretty obvious favorite. What do you guys think? Red carpet ready? Looks on paper? Yep.
3 for 3. Yeah, I would say so.
Yep. Charlie, you agree?
Yeah, I'm actually excited to talk about this race because I'm sure Patrick remembers, but we actually covered the race that the 1, 3, and 5 all raced against each other in. One of our shows we covered their exact race.
Yep.
And actually, we'll take a look at that one so you guys can talk through that one. So let's take a look. So if you look at our picks real quick at the bottom, oh, look at this. Kyle must have had a couple too many drinks because he went against the favorite, but maybe he'll switch once the morning line odds come out. But for now, we'll assume. So all three of us are on the 3, red carpet ready. And like you said, let's take a quick look. We'll take a quick look at this race. I don't know, Charlie, do you want to sort of talk this one through and then we'll sort of skip. Oh, actually, so we have the 8 is red carpet ready, the 7 undervalued asset, 3 atomically, and the 9 Positano Sunset, and then the 10 who sort of ran out. But let's see what we have here. So we got 7, 8, 3 we're going to sort of focus on. So Charlie, you want to walk us through a little bit and we'll watch a little bit here and then we'll sort of skip to the stretch.
Yeah, so basically I remember when I'd picked this race that I was flipping actually back and forth between the 7 horse and the 8 horse in this race. And actually I had the 3 in there as well. And I didn't really think much of the 3, but then I know Kyle was very, very high on the 3 when we had covered this show. So he guessing was pretty disappointed in terms of what ended up happening with this race. But the 8's certainly an interesting horse because if you looked at it in the past with its last few races, it wasn't getting bet much. When it won in its first race, it was 37. It would paid at 37, then $7.42. And then obviously in this race, it went off as the favorite. And I think also part of that though was, like it was in Churchill Downs, it was in a maiden race, but then they jumped it up to its stakes race and it won, then a grade 3 and it won again. So I do think this is an interesting horse, very talented, obviously had a strong kick in the stretch. And I mean, it seems like every race that it's had its doubters. The doubters have sort of continued to fade away because people have finally understood that this horse is for real. I feel like when you see a horse win its first race at 37-1, you don't know what to make of it.
Yeah.
But then it wins again. And now the public finally, when it went into its third race, were like, okay, this horse is probably legit. And it did just that. I will say, obviously, with the added distance, knowing this horse is going to want to be towards front, I don't think this horse is unbeatable by any means. I do think, though, if it continues to take a step forward as it has, it should win. I don't know. For me, the 3, I actually had it in the 1 in this race, but the 3 atomically from the last race had it originally in my top 3 and then switched it right before I sent it to you just because, I don't know, I was trying to believe that it would go back to its old form, but I just didn't love what I saw from it when I was watching that race. So I really do think this comes down to the 3 and 5. I do think Undervalued Asset has more in the tank. I don't think it performed to its absolute best when it went up against Red Carpet Ready, but I do think Red Carpet Ready is going to be tough to beat in this race.
Yeah, I agree with you. And Patrick, we'll let you talk because you have at least the 3 on top. He'll let you give some topic on the 3 there. So Kyle has the 5 as well, Undervalued Asset. Actually on top, you have him in second. I agree with you. This was one I wasn't sure because I didn't know if this one was just getting sort of a really good trip and then just sort of ran because it had a better trip than Atomically did and then just didn't do much at the end. There was one interesting stat I saw. I don't know if you guys can see it here on the screen. Chad Brown, 2 for 44 wins, 8 furlongs on dirt at Gulfstream. Again, that's super specific. I couldn't even tell you why that might be the case. But when I saw it, I was like, just Chad Brown being 2 for 44 under any circumstance is crazy to me. So I figured I'd at least point that one out in case that scares anyone off. Let's go up. Oop, I want to do that real quick. So Patrick, you have the 3 on top as well. Anything else you want to add, or you just think, hey, this one's just in form. You got to have this one at least on the top or near the top.
Yeah, I think you got to have the horse on top. And I mean, we can make the case that the horse did have a perfect trip and, it might have, but I believe it had the perfect trip because it ran just completely better than these horses. I mean, just outclassed these horses. That kick and deep stretch was, demolishing of those horses. The horse has been working great. I think this horse is going to like more distance, facing more speed, sure. But I think this horse is just better than them. I think Undervalued Asset is below Red Carpet Ready and would need to improve drastically to have any chance. And that's my second choice.
Okay. Oh, you see Howard. So Howard looks to be in the chat. Got a dream chip. Won't happen again this time on Saturday. So obviously Howard does not agree. And we'll see there's so much speed in this race. Outside horses will make Red Carpet Ready work much harder. He'll be stuck inside. He loves to worry about the inside. I'm not sure this one's going to get stuck inside, I think, but I do think Syed's aggressive enough where hopefully he can work out a trip. Let's go, Patrick. You have the 6 Guns and Graces in second. This is one, it's a tough one because you see that 47 and 54 buyers there, and it's hard to swallow. Hey, is that one really going to step up enough? Do you think this one has the ability to move that far up to maybe win this race, or just someone who's behind? And again, maybe sort of a price play potentially in the exotics or something.
Yeah, so I'm hoping for a big step up here. And Pete, you'd have this number for me. I'm not expecting you to get it right now, but Chad Brown horses coming from Tampa and like Tampa Mom at those tracks, smallerish tracks, and the horse runs well at low odds. I just think this horse might be lying under the weeds a little bit, and Chad's going to show this horse on a bigger stage on Saturday, and the horse might run big.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's one where you see it's a $375,000 purchase. First race was just, behind a horse who just obviously got away, wins by 13. Sometimes those you can just almost ignore because you're like, what the hell were you going to do with a horse that wins by 13? Second one out, breaks the maiden. Now coming back, it's out, it's bred well, picks up Rosario. It's just tough because it would need to take a huge jump in order to beat some of the top horses. But again, I mean, from 2 to 3, strange things happen and horses move forward. So if that one can, I mean, it definitely has a shot. Patrick, both of you and Charlie have the 2 horse in third, and I have in second. I'll let Patrick, what do you like about this 2?
Yeah, I think this 2's numbers fit. Distance wise, has won at this distance, so that's not a concern. Has been training well. The one thing is this horse did get a perfect trip. I did watch this horse's replay, and this horse rode the rail home and had the rail the whole way. So, but this horse for Patrick Biancone, a solid trainer, Jose Ortiz, this horse I think could fit.
I do like though. The one thing I did like is, especially with young horses, and she was making her, she's not super young. She's had 4 starts at that point, but I do still like to see a horse come up the rail. And it wasn't like, I don't think, if I remember correctly, I don't think the rail like just had a gaping hole. It actually did have to squeeze through a bit. So I do just like that, because if you do get into a position where you need to maneuver between horses, maybe that's something that this horse can do. And again, this is one like Charlie and I seemed to talk about earlier. Progression. If you throw out the 1-2 back, which was just I don't know what was going on there. Just obviously something bad happened, was eased, and then was off for a couple months. But a natural progression, comes back at 3, 82 buyer, just could be one that's maybe primed for another step up. And there isn't a horse in here, even though Red Carpet Ready is the best horse. I mean, she has an 87 buyer as the top buyer. I'm pretty sure that's the top buyer in the field. I don't see how it wouldn't be. That's not that hard to get to. It's not like she's running mid 90s and it would be tough to get to. Charlie, you have any thoughts on the 2 to piggyback on what Patrick said?
No, you kind of hit everything. The only other thing is I was honestly looking through here. I was just trying to also account for who other people picked. And I saw Kyle had the 10 in there, which I just think is interesting because this was a horse that I was kind of contemplating back and forth about throwing in there. Obviously, I just like Tyler Gaffaleone's my favorite jockey, so I tend to have a bias. Just the fact that he's on the horse, though, is intriguing. It is another horse. Now, granted, the progression's not crazy, but I do like the consistency. When you look in a field where, some horses, it truly has shown that they've been continuously progressing. Others kind of had a bunch of up and down figures, where at least this one has been very consistent and has had to deal with some very difficult paces. So I definitely think this could be one that could get into your exactas and trifectas at a pretty decent price. So I just felt like it was at least a horse to make note of.
Yeah, no, and I think the one thing you look at with this one, I mean, obviously is in 3 straight grade 1s, was in the Frisette, lost to Chocolate Gelato and You're My Girl, who didn't run as well in the juvenile fillies, but they were real high quality horses at the time. And then, in the juvenile fillies, run second to Wonder Wheel. So this obviously is a horse with some talent. I hasn't really done much wrong. I think for me, I thought this one might be better sprinting and might be able to sort of close out races better sprinting. But that's just, you agree with that? That's your sort of thought. So, but that's just more of a guess until we see her come back at 3. And I guess that's the tough thing when they're making their debut, especially in a graded stakes race, and they're making their seasonal debut. It's tough, but I think that I'd want to see this one first. So I'd want to see it. Yeah. So I think that's where I'm at. The last one I'll talk about, and Charlie, you mentioned earlier, was Atomically. I put this horse in 3rd. I had this horse in the juvenile fillies. You see how that turned out, apparently. Came back, did not run great in the forward gal. The only thing I thought, though, was sort of broke slow. I have some in my notes here, was sort of broke slow, was stuck in between, then swung wide, then once got going, sort of came on late. That's the only excuse I could make. Obviously likes Gulfstream, was successful at Gulfstream, but this could be one that also needs to, I don't know, maybe either needs a clash drop to sort of get the confidence back, or and sprinted last time. But I don't know what this one needs. So I'm going to give this one last shot in 3rd. If she doesn't do it this time, then I assume, because the thing that I don't like is you hate to see a horse who, 83 with the prior trainer, comes back, runs a 72, then only runs an 80 in the debut at 3. You're looking for potentially a progression over what her top was at 2, and we didn't see that. So I'm not too confident, but I'll stick with it one more time, and I guess I'll go down with the ship with her. Let's see. I don't think anyone else had anyone in here I don't think there's anything in the comments that anyone had related to any other horses. So we'll move on to the next one.
And as you're pulling up
Oh, go ahead.
Also, I was going to say
Yeah.
my two worries with the one. That's why I flipped it out.
Oh, yeah.
Was
Sorry, I
number
meant to ask you that. Go ahead.
no, you're good. Was the first thing which you kind of mentioned is it seems like we look for a lot of the same things. Was I just didn't see that progression, and I'm kind of worried that this horse maybe peaked.
Yeah.
As terrible as it is to say, I'm worried that it won't continue to step up. And I also don't love the fact that Jose Ortiz isn't on the horse again. That it chose the 2 over the 1. Obviously, it rode the last race for each of these horses, and he's probably considered the better jockey of the 2. So that also is something I tend to pay attention to. But yeah, I'd say the more so concerning thing, like you had started to mention, is has this horse kind of already reached its best?
Yeah.
Because if it has, it's not going to win this race.
No, and I agree with that. And actually, that's a good point about the jockey too. You don't really know. I don't like to get into all the jockey gymnastic stuff, but choosing a being Cohen horse over a Pletcher horse, that probably
That's
says
what
a
I was
little
thinking.
something there. The only thing I didn't mind as much is that Perez actually did ride this horse and ride this horse well. So it wasn't like a completely new jockey. So that was, again, I don't know if I was just trying to talk myself into having this horse near the top. So I could maybe take some of that with a grain of salt. So next, we'll get to the 13th, the McDermida, which I actually had to listen to a YouTube clip because I couldn't remember how to pronounce the name right, and at least that's what they were saying. So I'm gonna stick with it. It's 4-year-olds and up, purse 200,000, a mile and an eighth on the turf. And if you look at this one, I'm gonna guess. What do you guys think? Astronaut, probably the favorite. Just based on that last run and beating some of the horses in this race. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think those two buyers will definitely put that horse as the morning line favorite. But I think, I think the 10 that I believe Pete and I both have on top, I think the 10 is going to be, 3 or 4 to 1 at post time. I think this horse is definitely improved.
Yeah, let's start with the 10, by the way. Why don't we go there? Go
With
ahead. Why don't you talk that one through?
with Mike Maker. I mean, this horse is, ran on the Tapeta first out for Maker, won that race, and then came back at the end of January and ran second to Red Knight. And I didn't take a look at that race, but I think this horse for getting the distance for the first time, ran solid and now is facing a field that doesn't stick out too, extraordinarily to me.
Yeah, we could skip two because I think my thought with this one in this race, because I actually had Red Knight that day. And if you can look here's Red Knight sort of sweeping, and there's Value Engineering sort of 3 wide or maybe about 4 path out there. And I just think Red Knight was the better horse in that race. So I didn't look at it as sort of anything that Value Engineering did wrong. I just thought got beat by the better horse. And it wasn't like, look at her. He's hanging on pretty late, gets past, but I mean, he hung on till the end. Again, I think it was just a better horse that beat him. So I was with you here. And you talked about Maker real quick. So Maker's won this race 3 times in the last 5 years, 2019, 2020, 2022. There's a few Makers in here. So depending on which one you like, it's not, odds are that one of them is going to run and one of them is going to, we got a note saying that, do we have somebody is there wind? I don't think that's me. Is there somebody window open or something? Somebody said there's some wind in the background, but I don't know if either one of you, but it wasn't bothering me too much, but I saw it in the comment there. So I agree with you though on the 10. Charlie, you have the 10 in third, but what do you think about this horse? Anything new or different or
I honestly, Nick Feldman kind of hit it perfectly. This race for me, I think he had a really good comment. As brutally honest it is, that this is just a brutal race to figure out. I have the 7 on top, but I went 4 deep in this race. I really think there's a bunch of legit contenders. I feel like I saw somebody else mention earlier that this pick 5 started out seeming kind of chalky and that there were some obvious horses to go with or to try to go against. But I think that kind of ended here because I feel like this race is really tough. I definitely think the 10 is a talented horse. Definitely can see it winning this race. But there's no horse I could honestly just stand on and be like, this is the one to take. I think there are a lot of horses here that could be contenders.
Well, and I know Patrick agrees with that sentiment based on when we get to his pick 5 ticket, if I'm remembering correctly, right, Patrick? We don't have to spoil it yet, but we're talking about going deep in a race. We're gonna see when we get to yours. So, Charlie, real quick, why don't you talk about who we presume will be the favorite astronaut for Albertrani and actually picking up Saya? So you get a little bit pretend not there's anything wrong with Carmouche, but picking up Saez on a horse that has some speed that he could be aggressive with. What do you like about this one?
Yeah, as I've been kind of hammering down and mentioning, it doesn't seem like Astronaut would be the horse for me when all I do is preach that I like closers and that I don't like taking speed, especially in longer distance. But there are the occasions where I have to make exceptions and I have to, take off my hat and acknowledge when a horse is just able to get the job done. And that's what Astronaut is. It's a horse that likes to be at the front, but it's shown it can handle the distance and that it hasn't been a problem. You can obviously see the figures in its races have been very impressive, even in its first race where, you see it loses by 7 3/4 lengths, but still at a respectable 90 figure. So the figures on this horse have been incredible. When it came off of that initial layoff in October, it looked good. Took another step forward after that. I like what they're doing with this horse. I do think it can handle the distance, comes from a good sire and quality road. I just think this horse will be very dangerous. I think Luis Saez knows exactly what he's doing. And I do think it's the horse to beat. And I do think it'll end up having, as you guys mentioned, it'll probably end up being the odds-on favorite. I don't think, though, that this will be a huge favorite. I think this will probably be a horse that maybe goes off as the favorite at like 3-1, 7-2, somewhere around there. I don't think there's going to be a heavy favorite in this race. I have a feeling the public's going to feel the same way when they get to this one. They're going to keep saying, "Oh, we're sick of betting these 2-1, 9-5, 8-5 horses." There's always one, and then they get to this race, and everybody's like, "Oh God, I don't even know where to go with it." And you're going to see a bunch of horses that are like in that 3 to 5-1 range. That's what I.
Yeah, no, I think especially in a field this big, it tends to spread out. The one thing I did notice, there's a couple things where it's weird. It's a weird thing, and it probably doesn't mean anything that this horse was in the two best races was 67-1 and then 15. I don't know if that means anything. It was just getting no respect, basically. But the one thing I do like, and we sort of talked about this earlier, is I like when you can notice maybe a reason why the change happened. Obviously, we have a trainer change. Which could be one reason, but also they started under Albertrane, they put this horse closer to the front. And maybe that's just where the success lies. When you look earlier in his career, he was running some quality races, but then he was closing a bit. So maybe you say, oh, well, maybe this horse is a closer. Then it's running too far in the back. Now it's showing speed again. Although you look at the time form, and I think that the time form maybe gets a little confused because there's some speed, some from the way back. But I think if this horse is going to use this new dimension, then it maybe could be tough to beat. Let's see. You have, Charlie, we'll stick with you for a second because your horse in second place is the one highest honors. Chad Brown, Irad. What do you like about this one? I have this one in third, by the way. Patrick doesn't. Kyle has this one in second.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about consistency. I would argue this is the most consistent horse in the field. You see the speed figures 92, 96, 97, 98. So, I mean, there is progression, but it's just been incredible. You look at the distance this horse has been able to close as well. You look two back when it was in 10th and managed to get all the way up and just missed by a length. I really do think this is one of a horse that I think it'll actually be one of the few that benefits from being on the rail. I think it'll make it easier where it won't have to cover as much distance. It can kind of sit off those leaders again and get by. Even though it lost to Astronaut, I really do think this is a race where the one horse could end up winning. Love the Chad Brown Irad connection. I think this horse is very, very dangerous here.
And Irad's not going to have any trouble sort of bullying his way if he's stuck on the rail. He'll find his way through if he needs to. A couple things I thought was this horse hasn't been able to win, and that's the only problem with. And a horse is 7 now, so it hasn't been able to win once it got into stakes and greatest stakes company, always right there. So you can guarantee this horse is going to hit the board and give you a race, but just hadn't been able to get the win. And then one other thing, just on the page here, hasn't necessarily been at his complete best off the layoff, first off the layoff. So nothing bad. I mean, the horse really doesn't run bad races. So you're never going to get a true clunker aside from this one in the mud back here. And this was on the dirt anyway, but just hasn't maybe fired the best. So those were a couple of concerns which maybe dropped this horse a little bit down for me. Patrick, we'll go to you because you have the 11 in second and we haven't talked. And I see someone in here. Why don't you talk about a bond? I know someone else. Oh, here you go. Matt Shimura said he's giving a bond one last chance before the divorce papers just because he wants a horse on the lead. What do you think about this one? This one's hasn't been making it easy. It's been chewing up money. Favorite 3 straight races off the board. So what do you think can turn this one around?
Yeah, I'm hoping for this horse to be on the lone lead with Joel Rosario. Joel's beaten me before on the lead, within Italian multiple times. I'm just hoping this horse can get to the lead and, take him the distance. I'm not expecting much, but I just want to give this horse one last chance, like Matt said.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just I can't argue with it. I did have one stat: Pletcher Rosario 3 for 31 in turf routes as a combo. So if you don't like a Bon and you don't, if that stat can sort of sway you off it even more. It was just a tough horse. I think I've had that horse a couple times in this string of bad performances because you keep trying to give it because when he first came, when he first hit the graded stakes, he gets the win back here, gets a decent fourth, second. So it was actually looking solid, topped 100 buyer, which led to, in this race here, just was disappointing. And then these three, they're really hard to explain away because the trip, I mean, the pace was fast and this one could get the pace. I mean, if the pace heats up and this one has to work out a trip from the 11, that could be difficult. But I mean, who knows? Maybe this one brings back. I'd be curious to see the odds finally. So finally, are people going to not bet this horse? Because obviously it doesn't matter what this horse has been doing. They keep betting it. But I think this time maybe it would be one of the longer shots on the board. Let's see if there's anyone else to talk about. I know Kyle has the 2 Masterpiece. For me, I don't know about you guys. This is just a horse who is more of an underneath horse. Always runs the race, always runs a similar race. Way in the back, closes, whether that means hits the board or whether that means is one of those horses where you're like, oh man, this horse was closing like a freight train. I'll look at it next time out. Charlie, Patrick, you guys have any thoughts on Masterpiece for Kyle here?
Yeah, I think this horse is going to close.
Go ahead, Patrick. You go first, and Charlie, you can jump in after.
Yeah, this horse is going to close. I just don't know if this horse is as talented as some of the other ones. But seems to be working okay. I'm just not a fan. Not my cup of tea.
Charlie, what about you? You like the closers, but does this one usually leave himself too much to do?
I love everything about this horse. Tyler Gaffalione, favorite jockey, Saffie Joseph Jr. is great. I love the running style. But yeah, this just feels like one of those horses where I would look at it and fall in love in it. But the only way I'd ever bet it to win is if it was some crazy price. I'd probably put a couple bucks on it. But this would absolutely be a horse where I'm putting it in my tries, just knowing it'll get there. The only other horse I did want to touch on real quick, though, speaking of closers, is Wicked Fast. This was a horse that went against value engineering, and I actually really liked what I saw when you were showing the clip about value engineering, because what people might not have been paid attention to was one of the horses in the background that was closing in very well and that got a really rough trip and admittedly was a price that day, but was Wicked Fast. I don't know if this horse will win. It probably won't, but Michael Maker is a tremendous trainer. Javier Castellano, obviously a very solid horse. It is on that outside post, which is going to be tough for it. But I think this is another one that will be similar to Kyle's horse where it can close. I just think that when this one doesn't get bumped, which unfortunately has happened a lot to this horse, but if it doesn't get bumped, I think this horse won't be as far back as the 2 where it could end up closing and be a horse that surprises at a price.
Yeah, here's Howard, use underneath. Great call, Charlie. Yeah, I think the same thing. It was a horse for me where I couldn't get there. It's hard to get to on the win end because, again, like you said, it always seems to get itself into some sort of trouble. And sometimes that's just the way the horse is, maybe because they're in the back. They usually have to navigate too many horses and it's hard to get through. So it's a hard one on the win end. But I mean, I had it as sort of C level. But it was more of, if I was playing a triple and I was sort of doing a key, a couple horses on top, a few in second and a few in third, I would definitely have this horse and a couple of those bomb closers. Because a race like this, it just feels like anybody can get that second and third spot. And just a point of who's going to get there for the win. So we have another one on the 3 horse there is the long shot. That's value proposition. That's another one who I had a hard time just getting to. And there's so many in this race where there's reasons to think that they've run quality races, but they all run quality races in this field. It's a really stacked field. Like you said earlier, even though Astronaut looks the best in terms of figures, he's not miles the best over this field. So I think it's just quality up and down. So I do agree that this is one you could probably go deep in. And if the first 3 legs and the last leg potentially are all pretty chalky, maybe this is the one where we can get a price in. So let's go to the last one, the feature of the day, the Fountain of Youth, 3-year-olds, obviously, Derby prep, 400,000, mile and a 16th. Pretty obvious who the big favorite's going to be here. The return of the 2-year-old champion, Forte. So we've been waiting for this because we haven't had in the Derby preps. I'd like to get your guys' opinion on this quick. Charlie, we'll start with you. what has your been just a quick impression of the Derby preps in terms of it just seems like no one has really stood out. It just seems like a bunch of different horses are winning. No one's really jumped out and sort of solidified themselves as the favorite going into the Derby at this point. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I feel like you hit it right on the head. That's exactly what I was going to say. I feel like there isn't really that one horse that's really standing out to me and setting itself away from the rest. It's really like, man, I don't know how anybody's getting through that horse, or like it's going to come down to this one horse and if anybody can challenge it. I really do feel like this is a fairly open field. I mean, there's certainly been a few horses that have impressed me and I think could be interesting, but they're, like I said, you nailed exactly what I was going to say. I really don't think there's a clear-cut horse where you're like, it's them and then the field. I think it really is pretty open this year.
Yeah, Patrick, you agree, or anybody stand out for you? Just especially in the actual prep. So there's a couple of horses who've run in. Well, Arabian Night did run technically in a prep, so that one looked good and looks pretty strong. But there's still, I think, questions there. Tappet Trice, I know, is a fan of Paul and Howard's, but hasn't even run in a prep and has no points. So I don't really want to count that one just yet. What do you think about the preps? And are we waiting for a horse like, say, Forte to give that performance that we've all been looking for to sort of vault himself to the top?
Yeah, I think we'll have that answer on Saturday, like you said, with Forte. Arabian Night too, that you said. I think if we knew, if the picture was a little more clear on that horse with things going on with the trainer and stuff like that, we know a little bit more because that horse has looked dominant as well. But I feel like it's for the better, to be honest. I kind of like it, where we don't know exactly yet who is going to be the favorite for the Derby. I mean, Forte we could all assume is going to be, but it's kind of cool, having to figure this out with all these preps from a betting standpoint.
Yeah, no, and we do have and again tomorrow when the guys talk about Santa Anita, we have the San Felipe, and that's a really deep field. I don't know if you guys had looked at the Santa Anita card yet, but the San Felipe has come up pretty deep again with a lot of horses where you're just waiting for one of them to come up, and you're looking at horses like Hijazi and National Treasure and I'm forgetting all the ones that are in there. There's probably like 4 or 5 of the horses that are in that race where I think can win that, and that could be another springboard. Same here potentially. Howard, we're not mean to Kyle in the chat. Only the 3 of us on the screen are allowed to do that. So let's get into it real quick here. So all 4 of us have Forte on top. Patrick, why don't you start? We'll just talk quickly about Forte. I mean, there's a ton to like. Anything specific aside from sort of the obvious?
The horse is just a dominant horse. This is like a horse you just love to have. The way the horse wins its races, just not a stalking trip, but not coming from too far back and just pouncing, down in stretch. It's this horse is just a very, very, very talented horse, and this horse will be ready to go on Saturday, but it's got bigger aspirations.
Yeah, that's one. So Charlie, you and I obviously seem to lean the same way where we like closers. So this horse is sort of right up our alley. I'm a fan just regardless of this race and regardless of the Derby, I'm just a fan of watching him run. The only issue is when you're coming off the bench and you're a closer, do you have any worries that, hey, this one, maybe the pace is slow, maybe he gets a little too far back, maybe something happens, and when you're relying on coming off the pace, it's sometimes a little more difficult, even if you are the best horse in the race?
Yeah, no, honestly, that was my exact thought when we get to my card. I'm a bit surprised that there wasn't as much love on my second choice. I know Kyle has it as well in third. I thought it was going to get a lot more love, but I just feel like it's kind of like what you mentioned, because this is a fast track. And because the fact that Forte is going to want to be off the pace, the only way I really see this horse losing is it just has a bad start, or if it's just a horse that gets to the front, gets too much space, and Forte can't get there in time. That's really the only way I see this horse losing. And that's why when we get to my ticket later and when I talk about my second choice in this race, that's the only real way I could see it losing. Now, maybe I picked the wrong horse to do it, but for me, the 7 is a very
let's get to the 7
horse.
Mage. A Mage, I assume it's called. I assume that's how it's pronounced. I can't remember, but go ahead. Why don't you talk about this one?
So, I mean, yeah, certainly not a cheap horse, only has 1 start, but I mean, its last workout was a bullet. I love seeing that 5 furlongs in a minute flat. You can see obviously that it went to the lead and then it was going away. So I honestly am not really concerned with the distance addition because this horse seemed to only be getting stronger. I also know horses, I've learned through honestly being on this show, just how much progression horses can make in their second start after their first. So I just feel like a lot of stuff is set up well for this horse to end up proving people wrong and making a big side. I also saw when you had showed the odds, it is at a bit of a price. So at the very least, I think this horse could be interesting as a horse to put in your exactas and trifectas under a bigger favorite like the 4. But I feel like the 7 could be a horse that could shock a lot of people.
Yeah, and the only issue I had, and I agree with you, the only question was I wasn't sure if the 2, because Legacy Isle, and I don't think any of us know, none of us have Legacy Isle, and I wouldn't necessarily, but Legacy Isle also has some speed. So if Legacy Isle goes, then does that compromise Mage a bit if they're both sort of get into a duel? Now, for the people who all the other contenders are off the pace horses. So ideally, if you're a Forte fan, Blazing Sevens, Rocket Can, any of the other horses, you sort of want to see Mage and why am I blanking on the name? Legacy Isle sort of heat up the pace a bit so we could set it up for the closers. You think that's a possibility, Charlie?
Yeah, well, the other thing I just like, though, is I think the 7 speed is just a lot better than the 2s. I mean, you look at the figures, the 2s are in the low 70s versus an 89. And I also know that, again, I like that it's also on the outside, and I don't think it's going to really have anybody else on the outside fighting it too hard to try to get to that lead. I don't think it'll be a horse that has to, worry about getting bumped a bit around trying to get up there. So I just feel like this could end up being a very, very nice trip for the 7. And that's why I think it's the only horse, in my eyes at least, that could realistically upset the 4s. I just think it is in a spot and position where if it continues to step forward and make progress, it has the stats at least that it could do so. It has the position and that it could get a good trip like that. I personally think the 7 could be in a position where it could shock everybody. Now, I know we have to talk about the 8 because I know Patrick's smiling about it. Kyle is. Howard is, because everybody was all over Rocket Can. And there's another horse in this race, Cyclone Mischief. And I was the one who was hammering that Cyclone Mischief wouldn't lose to Rocket Can. And boy, did I look dumb. I got hurt on that horse.
And it's funny because Patrick's now coming back. Patrick, as you can see, Patrick's coming back with Let's talk Cyclone Mischief.
Okay.
Patrick, why don't you talk Cyclone Mischief first? Then we'll go back to you, Charlie, for Rocket Can. What do you think, Cyclone Mischief? You think he could turn that around after the clunker last time out?
I do, and I just don't understand. What happened with the horse in the last race? Was it just a dud? Was the horse injured? Like, obviously the horse isn't injured because Dale Robins is bringing the horse back, and Dale Robins said they had high aspirations for this horse. They bought the horse with high aspirations. I'm going to give this horse another shot. The horse is still young. I hope the horse doesn't. It's not that the horse doesn't like the track. The horse has won at this track. I think this horse deserves another chance. Do I think this horse is going to beat Forte? No chance. I do think the horse is better than Rocket Can, though. Don't get me wrong. I have a soft spot for Rocket Can after that win. That was an awesome win. But I don't think Rocket Can had a perfect trip, and I don't see that happening on Saturday. And I think Cyclone Mischief can have a little bit of a bounce back.
Charlie, let's talk about Rocket Can since we're on the Holy Bull. I like this horse a little bit. I think this one, I like the paired up by, again, didn't improve, but sort of paired up the buyer top. So maybe there's a move forward. This horse's races have been flattered. I mean, you see here, lost to Instant Coffee. Now got drubbed, so I don't really count that one that much. But 2 back ran a close race to Confidence Game, who just came back and looked pretty impressive in the Rebel. So maybe this horse is a little better than we originally thought, and the races he was running in are a little better than we originally thought. So what do you like about this one?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, again, I think this is a very impressive horse. I think it can step forward again. I don't see it winning, but I think it could definitely be in the top 3. I mean, I think Matthew kind of nailed it. I was kind of just disappointed with that race as a whole. Like, I didn't really see any horse that looked incredible. I thought Rocket Can did have a good kick at the end, but it also didn't run away. I thought the field kind of disappointed, and that with the trip Rocket Can got, it would run away. And the fact that it didn't is why I don't see it as a winner. But again, another horse at a great price that I think could do well in the exactas and trifectas. And I think you nailed it in terms of who it went against in the past. I really like Instant Coffee. That's a horse for me that excites me for the Derby. I mean, we'll have to see what happens. I have a little bit of bias just because in one of its recent races, I'd kind of nailed what it was going to do and made a good amount of money on it. And I like the horse in general. I like its style. So I do, obviously, anybody who goes against Instant Coffee, I give some benefit of the doubt of, since I really believe in that horse. But yeah, I still think Rocket can be dangerous. I don't see it winning personally. I think it'll step forward, but I don't know if it gets much better than 82. I think this will be one that sits a little off the pace and can get into second or third, but I don't see it as a realistic win contender.
Yeah, I think that's the hard part with a lot of them here is, so let's talk about, none of us picked it. Oh, actually, Patrick, I'm sorry. You have Blazing Sevens in third. Let's talk about that one real quick, because this one has lost twice to Forte, won the Champagne, ran okay in the juvenile after a little bit of a tough trip. coming back first time out. It's not a horse that I've loved. I don't know why. This just horse doesn't necessarily do it for me. I thought the Champagne was sort of a perfect trip in the slop against horses who just didn't run well and maybe haven't. I don't know. It was just something about that win. It didn't really excite me that much. And then in the juvenile, yes, you could say, oh, look, had a tough trip and still finished fourth, but ultimately still finished fourth. And I don't know. This doesn't give me the warm and fuzzies. And at the second choice here, I don't love it. What are your thoughts, Patrick?
Yeah, I agree with you. I just think the horse is better than most of these horses, just not, Forte. And to be honest, I think Cyclone Mischief might be a better horse. I just, I had to put the horse on my ticket because it is Chad Brown, and this horse can improve, and he can make us look dumb if I don't have him on my ticket. So
There's one in the comment here because I have the one General Jim in second, and I'll read Nick. He was really interested in General Jim. However, heard he missed his last work and might scratch, or if he doesn't, that gives me pause. I didn't realize that myself, so that would definitely give you pause. But if we just ignore that for a second, I'll just talk quickly about General Jim. The one thing that scared me about this horse is came back in 23, ran a 70, but if you watch that race, literally had nowhere to go. So you don't know if this horse gets a clean trip and can break through and sort of win that race probably easily, because it would have beat Legacy Isle, who was just dying to give that race up, I thought. And if he gets through and wins that race, then comes back and wins the Swale and pops a 90, where he ran against Super Chow, who's a real quality horse, and sort of went by relatively easily, I thought, even though it was only at 7 furlongs. I think this is one that could maybe take a step forward. $850,000 purchase. So this horse there was something about this horse that people liked. Tried the turf here and ran well on the turf. And now they say, let's try it on the dirt. We'll get a little Triple Crown fever. It's the one thing I did. So Shug, this is a super small sample size, 4 for 6, 6 for 6 in the money, 3-year-old males in graded stakes on dirt at Gulfstream. So generally like in these Gulfstream Park Derby prep type races, he's been super successful. So he knows how to get a horse ready here. Now, again, if what Nick said is true, then keep an eye on that for sure. But the only thing that scared me, I hate the 20-point jump, especially because it was only a month. They were both this year, and you get that 20 point, you're like, is that just too much? And it wasn't sort of that incremental, and this one's ready to sort of take a step back. But I like the way this horse looked. I like the way this horse ran. So I would give this one a shot in second, although I'll take a look and see. Oh, here we go. General Jim had a cough. If that's true, then maybe you look elsewhere. Hopefully they scratch the horse. You don't waste any money on the horse to begin with. I don't think the only other horse I thought, Shadow Dragon. Charlie, what do you think about Shadow Dragon? Another one, closer, was sort of coming at Rocket Can. Do you think more that was Rocket Can maybe not finishing off as well, or was it Shadow Dragon actually being a horse that, now that we're getting a little distance under him, can actually close into something, maybe even get a piece? Obviously, maybe not beat Forte, but can get a piece of this thing.
Yeah, this was one I put in parentheses on my sheet. So I had my top 3, but I put this one as like an additional one to cover. I think this horse is interesting. I mean, what makes it so confusing, obviously, I like that Jose Ortiz is on. I like that it's a Belmont horse. Obviously, was at a huge price. You look at the figures in the past, I mean, it looked like a terrible horse that was just going to end up being a disappointment that wasn't worth the price. And then all of a sudden just jumps up from a 52 to an 81. And it's kind of like what you mentioned. I don't know if it was like what you were talking with the one, if this was just like a one-hit wonder, and the horse just ended up finding something, or maybe, I mean, it was off a decently long layoff, so maybe Belmont has the horse working well. This would definitely be one that, just because it's at a price, I would sprinkle like a few bucks on it to win and maybe put in a few exactas underneath. But yeah, I don't really know what to make of the 3. This would be one more where I would put a little bit on it, but more so just kind of try to watch another race or 2 of it to see, is it legit? Did Belmont get this horse right now? Or was it kind of like a one-hit wonder where it happened to find something at the right time and go back to like the disappointment that it at least used to be?
And the one thing I did like is this horse, obviously this horse is a closer, so he's going to be looking to come off the pace. And in these races here, didn't get much pace to close into, whereas we assume, or at least on paper, I think there could be a little more pace here. There's better horses, so there could be something that heats up front. And if that happens, then maybe it sets it up for this horse. Again, I'm not sure about on the win end, although, I mean, you never know. If Forte, for some reason, just doesn't fire, then again, I think this one could just be wide open because it's a lot of horses we're looking to make that next step. And even Blazing Sevens, who a lot of people like, I mean, first start of the year, still has to prove that he's a horse that can, was it just that he liked to slop in that race? Who the hell knows? But we'll have to see. So we'll go actually to our pick fives now. So we do have, I'm going to read, Kyle sent me his pick five. Obviously people will be waiting in anticipation for Kyle's pick five. So we had to bring it on the show. So I'll read it off real quick. $64 ticket, 7 in the first leg with 1, 3, 4, 11, with 1, 3, 5, 10, with 1, 2, 7, 10, with 4, 6. So he's singling Charge It in the first leg, and then he's going with Blazing Sevens and Forte in the last leg, and then sort of spreading a little bit in the middle. So we just want to make sure that's up there. And again, Kyle's picks, obviously you saw on the bottom that Kyle's picks were there. Actually, let me take that scroll off real quick so it's not distracting for anyone. So Charlie, we'll go to yours next. I'll read yours off real quick, and then you can sort of talk through your ticket construction. Charlie, $72 ticket, 6, 7, with 1, 3, 4, with 2, 3, 5, with 1, 7, 10, 12, with 4, 7. Why don't you talk us through it a little bit?
Yeah, I was really debating about trying to have one of those races where I decided to single. It's kind of been a running joke on this show. I'm the only one who's refused to have the stones to actually single a horse. Still haven't gotten to that moment yet. I feel like it's tough. Like with Forte and that last race, I feel like it really only could have been the first or last race where you could confidently single a horse. But I thought what you were kind of mentioning at the end, what if Forte doesn't fire? So I went for the only other alternative that I see, which was with the 7 that we covered. And then in the first race that is part of our card, as I mentioned, I really like Endorse where it's closing off the pace. So again, I just feel like that's the only horse that could beat the 7. So that's why I couldn't risk singling those. Then went 3 deep in the next 2 races. And then obviously in the second to last races, we all kind of talked about. I'm excited because what you mentioned about Patrick's card to see how many deep he went in that race. But I think that's the wild card race in this card. I think that's the hard one. The one where if you are worried that it's going to be all chalk and you won't make any money, I think that's the race where you could get a bigger price that pays well. I know we mentioned my 12 Wicked Fast at the end, who Howard loves. That could again step up again at a price. There's a few other horses in there strong too. But yeah, I feel like this is a very interesting card. And I know a lot of people believe that this will be all chalk, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little less chalk than people expected.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you're obviously going to have to beat one of the favorites. So if you can beat Speak of the Devil, which I don't think would be out of the realm if they bet Speak of the Devil down, I think Charge It's going to be tough to beat, but I do think you want to catch one of those, or if you can catch, like you said, a bomb in that fourth leg. Let's see, Patrick, we'll go to your ticket. Patrick has a $48 ticket, 2 singles in there. He's got 7 with 1, 3, with 2, 3, 5, 6, with all in the fourth leg, as we talked about, and then he's singling Forte. So you got bookend singles and all in the middle somewhere, and then a little bit going. Why don't you talk us through it?
Yeah, I wanted to keep it under $50 too, because the bookend singles definitely bring it down. Both of these horses will go off as the favorite, and they're not going to pay much. And even in the second leg with both Chads, Speak of the Devil's probably going to go off as the favorite, I would have to guess. So that's 3 favorites you're looking at. And then in the third leg, I got 2, 3, 5, 6 with Red Carpet Ready, who is going to be the favorite, and I do think that horse is going to win. I was thinking of going a trifecta of singles, but I stayed away. I'm going to hope maybe catch a price in there being 4 deep, and in the fourth leg, that's my price. I'm hoping a bomb comes in, a bond maybe if that horse could be pretty high up there in odds. So yeah, that's pretty much my structure. If I can get through the first 2 legs, I feel like I'll be sitting back in a decent position and gearing up for Forte.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess one thing we'll mention, we always talk about this on our show, that a lot of times we give our sort of caveman tickets. Maybe we don't play those, off the screen. We don't play those necessarily. Maybe we play ABC tickets. But in the case like this, where you do think it's going to be pretty chalky, Then you go real skinny and you just really up the denomination. So instead of playing a 50-cent pick five, you play a, $2 pick five, and you sort of cut back a little bit, and you cut back to what you think are the, if you like the 7, if you like the 3, if you like the 4, and then you just go a little bit skinnier in the other ones, then you can get that ticket down and up the denomination. So just something else for everybody to think about. I know our listeners, but in case there's some that don't do that as much, you can bring up the denomination and then play backup tickets if you want to spread a little bit. So I'll give mine now. Mine's $96. I even stayed under our HH Racing Podcast budget just to be a nice guy. So I'll go 6-7 with 3-4-6-8 with 1-2-3 with 1-6-7-10 and then with 1-4. So again, in the first leg, Endorsed and Charge It. That is a race where I most likely wouldn't play those two as the only two. I might single Charge It on my sort of top ticket at a bigger denomination, and then maybe play a couple underneath in case he gets beat. Second leg, I think if Speak of the Devil goes down, I think it's pretty wide open. So I have Speak of the Devil, White Frost, actually Miss Delicious, who we never talked about, but lost the race to White Frost, and then Miss Yearwood, who I'm hoping is a price. I like to reevaluate the tickets once I see the odds, make sure I don't have too many low priced horses all on that sort of top line. Next race, 1, 2, 3. Red Carpet Ready, Infinite Diamond are probably the two I like the most. I might drop Atomically down just because I don't trust Atomically. So, but for the purposes of a caveman ticket, I wanted to put her in the mix. And then on the turf, I like a little bit of everybody. Have some Chads. I have Bema's Boy, who we didn't talk about, who's another maker horse. The 7 Astronaut, who looks like the obvious just based on figures, and then the 10 Value Engineering, the other maker. So you can't go wrong usually with 2 makers and a Chad and probably the best figure horses. And then the last Forte, I would probably single Forte again, but just in case he doesn't come up sharp, then I went with General Jim. But again, if there's any questions about him, then I would definitely drop back and single. I would single him for sure, just because I'd be I would put Forte as a single probably anyway, but if there's any concerns about the one, then I wouldn't want to have him as the same value as the other one. So real quick, we'll try and do this quick since we've been going for a while here. One thing we wanted to do outside of the horses was some quick futures. So we'll run through these real quick. Patrick, I'll bring up yours first. We talked mostly about NBA and NCAA basketball, except that I cheated a little bit and added one thing extra, but Patrick, so yours were NCAA conference tourney champions. You have Villanova in the Big East, Indiana in the Big Ten, and Gonzaga in the West. What are they?
West Coast.
West Coast, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So why don't you talk through them real quick and try and just zip through why you like each of these three?
Yeah, I'll zip through them quick. Nova is getting hot at the right time. They're not in the tournament. They will not make the tournament unless they win the Big East. They're the most talented team in the Big East. They've won 4 out of 5. I'm not a Nova fan, to say the least. I can't stand Villanova basketball. This is just a typical Villanova team with a new coach that is getting hot at the right time, and I think they're going to do very well in the Big East tournament. I think they got a decent shot at winning it. They've lost. They play UConn on Saturday. They lost to them. They got embarrassed to them earlier on in the season. I just think Villanova is a pretty smart bet because they're going to be the 3rd or 4th choice. And who would think they would be the 3rd or 4th choice every year in any year in the Big East tournament?
And I mean, yeah, plus 650 is what the line, at least we saw today. So that's a nice price if you're getting a team that has shown, even though it's a different regime now, that has shown tourney winning experience in the past. Indiana, we didn't have any odds yet. I didn't see them. I don't know if they came up since, but thoughts on that one real quick. The Big Ten seems, it was Purdue for a while, but Purdue seems to be going the wrong way. Indiana seems to be on their way up. What do you think?
Yeah, Indiana has been playing unbelievable. Mike Woodson has that squad playing really well. I know Howard's happy about that. They got the center in Trace Jackson Davis, who's one of the best players in the country. So I think they'll be the 2nd or 3rd choice, and I think they have a decent shot, and they'll be overlooked by the betting public. And then my final one, Gonzaga, it is minus 145. But like I talked to Pete earlier on in the day, with Gonzaga, I like to match them up with other conferences. So, I could take my Villanova and my Indiana and, parlay them up. Gonzaga's already in the semifinal of their tournament. The West Coast Conference is smaller. And, they get a double bye. So they're already in the semifinal. They're going to probably face St. Mary's in the championship game, and they beat St. Mary's this past Saturday by 20 points. I think they're clearing away the best team. This is, I put it on there to, give you an idea of maybe parlaying a couple tournament teams together.
Yeah, I can't remember. What did we say? Was it plus 1,100? It was about 11 plus 1,100 if you parlayed Villanova and Gonzaga. So just something to look at that you could actually parlay those. At least I think we were looking at FanDuel, BetUS, who's a sponsor. If you look on there as well, I don't know if they offer parlays, but parlaying tournament conference tourney champions is a good way to maybe balloon up the payment. Probably not the smartest gambling in the end, but if you only stick to maybe two, that's not bad. I usually go the wrong way and add too many in. Charlie, let's jump into yours now. You're a Suns fan, right, Charlie? If I remember correctly. Okay. So you got Durant. I assume they won. I didn't look at the score. I don't know if they won today, but I know they won.
Oh yeah, I had the game on in the background. Yeah, they won. They won, I believe, by 14. I think it was like 105 to 90 something. Yeah, no.
So actually, let me read it off real quick for the listeners, and then I'll let you get in. So he has for the NBA champions, Suns plus 450, Bucks plus 440, and Clippers plus 1,100. Why don't you talk about those three real quick?
Yeah, so what I was kind of trying to do with my futures, and there's actually one other for college I want to touch on in a moment. But I was trying to kind of give out like two more realistic picks and then one that's at a longer price if you're trying to find one of those. So honestly, I was just trying to find one in each conference. I think the Suns with Kevin Durant are the clear favorites. I mean, they looked really, really, really solid tonight, and I don't think they played anywhere near as good as they're capable of. Durant was on a minutes restriction. I mean, it's their first time playing any organized true game together. So I think as long as they can stay healthy, I think they are the team to beat. I think.
I mean, that's the key, right? Because of sorry, I didn't mean to cut you. I was going to say that's the key. I mean, Durant hasn't been able to make it through playoffs. Or through long stretches. Paul always seems to wear down. And even Booker's always, for a young guy, has had sort of the random injury that sort of derailed him for games here and there. So, I mean, at plus 450, that's the concern with taking, that's relatively low odds. And you're taking basically one of the favorites with a lot of injury potential that would probably scare some bettors off, I would assume.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think for the East, I know a lot of people are going to go towards the Celtics, but I actually think the Bucks are the team to beat. Middleton is just starting to get healthy. Their team really hasn't been fully like whole together for much of the season. Middleton's been still on a minutes restriction coming off the bench. I mean, I don't know how anybody's ever going to figure out how to correctly stop Giannis. They don't really have injury issues, though, for their core, too. I think Middleton kind of will be that number two guy, but Drew Holiday has picked that role up for him for now, and he's been healthy. I honestly, another thing I actually found, I didn't realize you could bet this, but I would maybe even sprinkle a little bit on picking the NBA Finals to be a rematch of the Bucks versus the Suns. I'm sure
we'll get to a bet like that in a minute, actually.
And then for the Clippers, I just think, I mean, honestly, I don't know how I feel about Westbrook, but I liked a lot of their other moves. I like them bringing in.
I don't know what that was. Sounds like the fire alarm, actually.
College dorm.
Oh, it's anything could happen at a college dorm.
Yeah.
So the one thing I'll say while Charlie he went off the screen there, the one thing I will say about the Clippers is I think they're 0-3 since the Westbrook pickup. So his effect on teams is showing up again. So where I don't know. Patrick, real quick, do you have a quick NBA champ just off the top of your head, or are you still thinking about that one?
I think the Suns is the obvious choice, but I like the Celtics out of the East. I think they're clearing, far away the best team in the East, so I'd go with them.
I'll put mine up now. We'll go through mine, and we'll see if Charlie doesn't make it back. We'll talk. Well, at least actually, let me talk him through just real quick in case he doesn't come back. He had NCAA champs, the tourney champs, men's, obviously, Houston plus 600 and UConn plus 2,500. So we can let him talk about those if he comes back on and if he gets his dorm situation sort of fixed there. So mine, I have a few, and I actually cheated. I added one NFL draft. So NBA title matchup, sort of like Charlie was talking about. Bucks Nuggets right now, if you look at like 538 or some of the other metrics, they're basically the two of the top three, if not the top two choices and they're plus 1,000 right now. I think that their matchup may have been the fourth or fifth choice at this point. So getting that matchup at plus 1,000 with the way the Bucks are playing, the West seems to be wide open. I don't really love any teams, but the Nuggets have been consistently the best team probably from a third of the way through once sort of Jamal Murray got fully healthy. Now they're looking, they're sort of rounding into form. And again, in a wide open West, I think anything can happen, but I'll stick with Jokic. And I think maybe the best all around team in the West against the Bucks, who just have Giannis and the pedigree, and they've won about 1,000 in a row at this point. For the NCAA tournament, I'm going to lean on UCLA. I like them last year too. They're plus 1,000 as well. The one thing I like about them, they just have really experienced and quality guards and wings. And in the tournament, guards and experience can take you a long way. They're maybe not the biggest up front, and if they ran into maybe the wrong matchup, there could be some problems there. But in a tournament where generally if you have experienced guards, like a team like Purdue has freshman guards, you look at that and go, oh man, they're going to catch the wrong team and they're going to shoot bad or something bad is going to happen and they're just not going to be able to overcome it. Whereas I'd rather see guys who have been around multiple years, have made decent runs into the tournament and have the experience. So I'll stick with UCLA. And then the last one, which I didn't tell these guys that we were going to do, but when I saw it, I figured, let me just throw it in. First quarterback off the board in the NFL draft, not first pick. I didn't want to go first pick because a defender theoretically could go first, and the difference, aside from ones that don't get arrested, as would happen. So
that was bad.
Yes, that's terrible. But so I figured, and the difference between Anthony Richardson being the first quarterback off the board at plus 700 and the first overall pick was plus 800. So I'd rather take the safer bet at plus 700. But basically with the combine coming up, and he's going to do all the works, apparently, as what they say right now. He's going to basically participate in everything. And he's just a freak athlete. He's got a freak arm. He could do everything. Bryce Young might come in super skinny, looking like Patrick with that T-shirt on. Unfortunately, maybe me in my younger days. But if Bryce Young comes in looking like that, and Anthony Richardson comes in looking, all beefed up and has a rocket arm and shows all the athleticism that he does, I could see a team falling in love with him and him catapulting to the first quarterback taken. And if that happens, if he does so well at the combine, and all the buzz is there, and so there's some negative buzz about Bryce Young, then these odds are going to drop precipitously come next week, or I think the combine is this week. So I jump on it now, plus 700, take the shot. What the hell? Might as well get the odds now while you can. So I guess we'll leave it at that. Again, we'll talk. You guys will talk hopefully in the future as we get closer to the NCAA tournament, Patrick, and the conference tourneys. I'm sure you guys will lean on that a lot. Everybody likes to, even if you're not a college basketball fan, I think everybody at least likes to play in bracket pools and such. So any advice you guys can give will probably be beneficial. So for all the listeners, definitely follow this podcast for that as well. Aside from all the horse racing tips with the NCAA tournament around the corner, it's going to be a great listen. Patrick, give some final thoughts on, say, the Gulfstream sequence, or since you handicapped the whole spread of stakes races, just that card as a whole?
Saturday's going to be a lot of fun at Gulfstream. This card is unbelievable. It kind of reminds me of Belmont Stakes Day and Travers Day. At Belmont and Saratoga, it's just great horse racing all day long. And, as for horse fans, there's nothing better.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's a full day, and then you have Santa Anita. And don't forget tomorrow, Kyle, Howard, Paul covering the late pick 5 at Santa Anita, which includes the San Felipe, which is a pretty awesome prep. Like I said, there's a lot of horses in there who, if one or two of them step up out of that race, can really shake up sort of the Derby standings. And then the power picks, if you want to subscribe, if you're already a subscriber, great. We're going to be covering Gulfstream and Santa Anita. If you're not a subscriber, great week to jump in. 2 big stakes-filled cards, and we're going to be covering both of those, and then all the Derby preps and the Derby races and the Triple Crown, and obviously everything beyond. So subscribe now, jump in while you can. So I think that's about it. So thank you guys again for letting me step in for Kyle. Kyle will be on tomorrow. Hopefully he doesn't embarrass me like I probably embarrassed him today with some of the work we did here. But for myself, Pete Visco, Charlie Freeman, who's off the screen, Patrick Kuenzel, thanks again for joining us. Let's cash some tickets this weekend, everybody. Take care.
Good night.
Good night, everyone.